a private compound on 2 continents. A Manhattan penthouse valued at $50 million, sitting above one of the most expensive zip codes on Earth. A glass garage housing a car collection worth more than most people's entire neighborhoods. This is not the home of a tech billionaire or a Wall Street titan. This is the private world of the only black man in the 75-year history of Formula One to ever start a Grand Prix. While the world was busy watching athletes perform wealth for social media validation, one man from a council estate in Stevenage, England was doing something categorically different. He wasn't renting the lifestyle. He was acquiring the infrastructure. He wasn't chasing access. He was buying ownership in the systems that gate-kept access from men like him in the first place. Today, we are going deep. Deeper than the championships. Deeper than the contracts. Into the full financial and personal blueprint of the rich black F1 driver that broke the rules of wealth. This is the story of Sir Lewis Hamilton. And it starts long before the podiums. Stay locked in until the end, because we are breaking down the single most audacious financial move Lewis Hamilton has made off the track. A move that placed him inside a $4.65 billion ownership consortium and permanently changed what a black athlete is allowed to own in American professional sports. This is not a retirement plan. This is a dynasty in construction. We are going chapter by chapter through the life, the setbacks, the strategy, and the empire. Because to understand where Lewis Hamilton stands today, you first have to understand exactly how many times the system tried to stop him from getting here. Chapter 1. The Origin. Stevenage to the starting grid. Stevenage is not a city that produces Formula One world champions. It is a mid-sized British commuter town where the average household income sits below the national median and where the most exciting thing most kids grow up near is a retail park off the A1. Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton was born there in January 1985 to a black father named Anthony and a white mother named Carmen. His parents divorced when he was 2. He grew up with his mother in modest circumstances, and the word modest is doing significant work in that sentence. By the age of 8, Lewis Hamilton was already the fastest kid at his local go-kart track. By 10, he was the youngest driver in British karting history to win a national championship. But the financial reality behind those early victories was brutal. Anthony Hamilton, Lewis's father, was working simultaneously as an IT contractor, a manual laborer, and taking on every additional income stream he could locate, accumulating over £31,000 in personal debt just to keep his son on the track, at a time when Formula One was, and largely still is, a sport where the price of entry at the junior level can exceed $2 million before a driver ever sits in a professional car. Anthony Hamilton was fighting a war of resources against families with generational wealth, and he refused to lose it. At 10 years old, Lewis Hamilton walked up to Ron Dennis, one of the most powerful men in Formula One, at an awards dinner, looked him directly in the eye, and told him he wanted to race for McLaren one day. Dennis wrote his phone number in Lewis's autograph book and told him to call in a few years. 3 years later, at 13, Lewis Hamilton signed a development contract with McLaren, becoming the youngest driver in the history of the sport to be backed by a Formula One team. But here is what most people miss about that moment. Anthony Hamilton negotiated that contract himself. No agent, no agency, no 20% management fee hemorrhaging out of his son's first professional earnings. Anthony built the management structure in-house, retaining control over the commercial architecture of Lewis's career from day one. That decision alone would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars over the following 2 decades. The flex at this stage of the story isn't financial, it is psychological. A black boy from Stevenage, backed by a father working 3 jobs, walked into the most exclusive paddock in motorsport at 13 years old, and belonged there. That is the foundation everything else was built on. Not luck, not inheritance, audacity, strategy, and a father who refused to accept that the ceiling was fixed. Chapter 2. The setbacks, the years. The story almost ended. Here is the part of the Lewis Hamilton story that the highlight reels skip past, because every empire worth documenting has a chapter where it nearly collapsed. And for Lewis Hamilton, that chapter ran from roughly 2011 through 2013, and it was not subtle. In 2011, Lewis Hamilton was involved in more on-track collisions than any driver on the grid. His relationship with McLaren was visibly fracturing. His personal life, a high-profile relationship that played out in the tabloids, was being weaponized against him in the press. British media, which had positioned him as a golden boy since 2007, began a narrative pivot that any black athlete in a predominantly white sport would recognize immediately. The coverage stopped celebrating his talent and started cataloging his temperament. By 2012, the pressure had compounded to the point where Hamilton made the most controversial decision of his career. To that point, he walked away from McLaren, the team that had supported him since he was 13 years old, and signed with Mercedes, a team that at that time had not won a Constructors' Championship in decades. Every analyst, pundit, and paddock insider called the Mercedes move a mistake. McLaren had resources, history, and a known infrastructure. Mercedes was a project, but Hamilton had identified something that the external commentary completely missed. Mercedes had engineering talent, factory backing from one of the largest automotive companies on Earth, and a technical philosophy that was about to become the most dominant in Formula One history. He wasn't chasing a guaranteed contract. He was making an equity bet on an emerging asset before the market recognized its value. The financial concept embedded in that decision is called asymmetric risk positioning, accepting short-term uncertainty in exchange for long-term structural advantage. Within 2 years, Mercedes was the most dominant team in the sport, and Lewis Hamilton was their driver. 6 world championships in 6 seasons with Mercedes. The move that every expert called wrong produced the longest sustained period of dominance by a single driver in the modern era of Formula One. The setback years didn't derail the empire, they redirected it toward a larger one. That is what separates strategic thinkers from reactive ones. The losses were part of the blueprint. Lewis Hamilton's net worth is conservatively estimated above $300 million, but the number is almost irrelevant compared to the architecture underneath it. He holds equity in Neat Burger, a plant-based restaurant chain operating across the United Kingdom, United States, and Middle East. He co-founded Dawn Apollo Films, a production company with an active development slate at major streaming platforms. He joined the consortium that purchased the Denver Broncos for $4.65 billion, the most expensive sports franchise acquisition in American history at the time, buying a seat at an ownership table that has historically been one of the most racially exclusionary in professional sports. And through Mission 44, his philanthropic foundation, he has committed over $20 million to pipeline programs designed to put underrepresented young people into STEM and motorsport careers. Each of these isn't a side project. Each is a deliberate position in a diversified ownership portfolio. The financial concept Lewis Hamilton has mastered at the highest level is called narrative embedded equity, the practice of investing exclusively in assets where his personal identity, story, and public credibility generate compounding returns that go beyond the purely financial. When Hamilton invests in a plant-based food company, his vocal environmental advocacy drives press coverage that no marketing budget could purchase. When he joins a film production company, his global celebrity accelerates greenlight decisions. When his foundation funds a young black engineer into a motorsport pipeline, that engineer's future success circles back to strengthen Hamilton's legacy as an institution builder. Every investment he makes is load-bearing. Every asset strengthens every other asset. He has not just built a portfolio, he has built an ecosystem. And then there is the life the empire produces. A knighthood from the British Crown, Sir Lewis Hamilton, making him one of the most decorated athletes in British history. A historic signing with Ferrari, the most mythologized name in motorsport, while Tessiture at a reported $100 million per season. The largest driver contract in the sport's 75-year history. A $50 million penthouse in Manhattan. A private estate in Colorado. A Met Gala co-chair invitation that placed him at the center of global culture, not as a guest but as a curator. And a fashion presence so deeply embedded in luxury that the brands compete for proximity to him. This is not a retired athlete living off residuals. This is an active, expanding empire being built in real time. Chapter 4. The Legacy. What Hamilton actually changed. Here is the part of the Lewis Hamilton story that will matter most in 20 years. Not the championships, not the contracts, not the penthouse. It is the question of what a black boy growing up near a go-kart track anywhere in the world believes is possible for him now, in 2026, that he could not have believed in 2005. Because before Lewis Hamilton, the answer to whether a black driver could compete at the highest level of Formula One was theoretical. After Lewis Hamilton, it is historical fact. Mission 44 has funded over 5,000 young people from underrepresented backgrounds into education and career pathways in STEM and motorsport since its founding. Hamilton co-founded the Hamilton Commission, which produced a landmark report on the structural barriers preventing black people from entering Formula One as engineers, mechanics, and strategists, not just drivers. The report identified that fewer than 1% of the Formula One workforce was black. He published that finding and then funded the pipeline to change it. That is not activism. That is institutional disruption with a budget behind it. The Long Horizon strategy, embedded in Mission 44, is one of the most sophisticated legacy moves in the history of athlete philanthropy, and it operates on a financial logic that most people miss entirely. By investing in the pipeline of black engineers and strategists entering Formula One, Hamilton is simultaneously building the talent base that will staff the teams, the companies, and the technical infrastructure of the sport for the next 30 years. Some of those young people will become executives, some will become founders, some will become the technical directors of the next generation of championship-winning teams, and every single one of them will know exactly who funded their pathway. That is not charity. That is long horizon relationship capital, compounding across decades. In 2025, Lewis Hamilton pulled on a red Ferrari race suit for the first time. In doing so, he became the first black driver to ever race for Scuderia Ferrari, a team founded in 1929, with a history so intertwined with Italian national identity that it is referred to in Italy simply as La Scuderia. The significance of that moment is not sentimental. It is structural. It means that the most exclusive address in motorsport, the most storied, most politically complex, most symbolically loaded team in the history of the sport, decided that the best driver available to carry their legacy forward was a black man from Stevenage. And that decision was not charity. It was competitive necessity. Lewis Hamilton is that good, and his empire is that large. Stevenage to a Ferrari race suit and a seat at the table of the most expensive sports franchise in American history. The scale of what Lewis Hamilton has built proves one thing without ambiguity. The rules of wealth in motorsport were not written for him, and he rewrote every single one of them anyway. So tell us in the comments, which chapter of this blueprint hit hardest? Was it the 13-year-old who negotiated his own McLaren contract, the calculated bet on Mercedes that every expert called wrong, or the $4.65 billion ownership move that rewrote what black athletes are allowed to own?